Welcome to another episode of Get Rich, the podcast that helps you do just that. Get rich and stay rich. Now, today I'm joined by the incredible Victoria McLean, who is a CV expert who has reviewed over 250,000 resumes. Yeah. So if you've ever wondered why your CV isn't getting any love or how to actually stand out in today's really competitive job market, then you're going to want to stick around and listen to this because Victoria is spilling the tea when it comes to the biggest mistakes she sees on CVs and why using AI might actually hurt your chances of being selected and how your cute CV template might actually be getting you ghosted. We're also going to cover the proven CV formula that gets interviews and how to switch careers or return from a break without being overlooked, plus the LinkedIn mistakes that could be costing you job opportunities. So let's make a quick agreement. Look, if you get something out of this episode, you'll go hit that subscribe button. All right, enjoy. Victoria, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Hi, Molly.
Hi. All right, so you've been in this industry for a very long time. What makes a CV stand out in this kind of very competitive market?
So for me, there's three main things, but number one, you've got to tailor your CV to your job description. One size does not fit all when it comes to CVs, and many people try to be all things to all people, and you just can't be all things to all people. So yes, you can have that perfect prototype CV, that perfect resume, but at the end of the day, you have to tweak it and tailor it for each role. And the other thing that you have to do is show your audience why they should hire you, why you are valuable. And I think when most people go wrong is they write a CV and it's full of all their skills, but they forget if you strip everything away, and you know, Molly, I would say whether you're going for a role in the charity sector or the finance sector or marketing or whatever it is you might do, strip everything away, you are only being hired for one reason, and that is that if they pay you money, you're going to deliver something in return. And a lot of people don't show that. Actually, getting a job is a commercial transaction. You are being paid to go to work. They've got to know they're going to get a good return on their investment. So for me, the second thing is showing that you're valuable. And the final thing that will really make you stand out is providing context. What I mean by that is, so many CVs that I look at, they might include achievements, but I don't know how big the company was. I don't know how many people they're working with. I don't know what regions, what products, what types of clients. So again, think really carefully about providing a background narrative for every role. So you're telling a story. At the end of the day, your CV is telling a story about you, your career, the wonderful things you've done. If it's not doing that, it's not doing a good job.
I love when you say that. And I remember we were on a session before for Ladies Finance Club and you said, yeah, you've got to, think of yourself, you're adding value to this business. How are you adding value? And I'd never really thought of myself as like, oh, well, I just do marketing. Well, actually, no, we're trying to create more revenue for this company. So it actually made me really think about it in a very different way, very much in the business sense of what they're looking for. In another session once, you said there are two mistakes that 97% of hirers will reject your CVs for. What are those two mistakes?
Well, that would be two typos. Actually, we do not proofread our work. We do. Obviously, we're a CV writing firm, but individuals don't tend to proofread their work. It's really, really hard to proofread your own work. What happens is you get a word stuck in your short-term memory, I don't know, delivered or achieved. And before you know it, you've written that word 50 times and on your 2 pages or your 3 pages. So really thinking carefully, making sure that somebody who isn't you proofreads your CV, really important. But there are a number of other mistakes that people make. I mean, I have looked at, it's really scary. I've been working for over 25 years in this industry. So I've a bit of calculation. I've probably looked at about 250,000 CVs.
250,000 CVs.
Quite a lot, isn't it? Quite a lot. So I know what really makes them work. We've talked a bit about tailoring, but one of the big mistakes is that people don't tailor it. They're not thinking carefully enough about their audience. They're not quantifying their achievements. So yeah, they might write a great bullet point about something that they have done, but it's not quantified, so it doesn't really mean anything. You might say, for example, refined process, but you haven't explained what the process was. You haven't said what the outcome of that was. Well, the outcome of refining that particular process might be increased efficiency, which saves X number of dollars or pounds. So it's always thinking, well, what did I do what was the value of that? Again, we're going back to your comment, Molly, about value. The other thing that I think we're going to be talking about later is keywords. Really big mistake is ignoring keywords. We'll chat about that a bit later on. And making sure it looks good. Don't be afraid to make it look pretty. We want to be a bit of a showstopper, someone to open that attachment and for it to look good and smart and corporate and professional as well.
Because I think that's a question that comes up a little bit around the design of the CV. Like, should we be putting things in tables and making it pretty and putting in a picture of ourselves? What would you say on that?
The way that recruitment works now is using something called an applicant tracking system, which is a database that recruiters use to store CVs, but also to search for people. And when they're advertising, any job you see online now will be built within an applicant tracking system, which is the technology they use to screen. If you put any content in a table or a text box, the ATS, the applicant tracking system, can't read that content. So whilst it might feel, gosh, it will look great and really neat in a table, no. The other thing that you will have seen, I've seen so many of them now, there are a lot of templates you can download online that will have sort of like a thinner column here and then maybe 2/3 of the page over here. The applicant tracking systems can't read that content. They get really confused by columns. So we, for example, used to use columns a lot when we would have a key skills section in a CV. You'd have 3 columns. The ATS gets really confused. It doesn't know what should go where. So keep it really, really simple. And probably photos can be great on a CV, but at the end of the day, if someone wants to know what you look like, they'll look at you on LinkedIn. The problem is if we put logos and photos on our CV, it increases the file size. If the file size is too large, it doesn't work well in the applicant tracking system. So keep it simple. No photos, no logos, no tables, no text boxes. Super simple. No columns.
That's so interesting. And that explains why a lot of my earlier CVs were not successful, because I'd put them exactly that. I'd bought this really cute template off Etsy. It looked adorable, but never got any response on it, probably because the system couldn't read it.
Yeah.
There you go. Are there any other really common mistakes we should be aware of as well, like that? Because that's a huge one.
It's a huge one, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, the big one for me is ChatGPT at the moment. I know we were chatting about that before the show, weren't we, Molly? But I'm asked about
all
that.
these videos said to me on Instagram, they're like, update your CV in 2 minutes with ChatGPT. And I'm like, is that a thing?
Lots of people are doing it. But if you think about the purpose of your CV, the only thing it's meant to do, right, is make you stand out. It's show that you're the perfect candidate for a role. What any type of AI does is it's generic, so it's homogenizing. It's making everyone's CV the same. It's taking data from other people's CVs, other people's resumes to create this sort of homogenous pool of CVs. So the first thing is that it makes you not unique. It's like the total opposite of what you're trying to achieve. They also tend to, I mean, all the ones that I've looked at, whether you use ChatGPT or any of the others, they overstuff your CV with the keywords. Keywords are important, but if you've got too many in there, it just appears really robotic. It doesn't feel readable, and it's very, very clear that it wasn't written by you. At the end of the day, a good CV has to be compelling.
Yeah.
It has to be written by a real human being to showcase your personality and your career aspirations. And I just don't think AI can replace that at all. But the other thing is, a couple of other things. The big 4 firms now have banned any use of AI in any application. So, for example, PwC could spot, and they've got, funnily enough, AI checking for AI, but they, if they can spot any kind of AI being used in the application, you're immediately rejected. And I think we're going to see much more of that. But also, ethically, ChatGPT does not have the same kind of rules around GDPR that we're all very used to. Your data is not protected. So anything that you upload to there is there for anybody else to find. And actually, if you spend ages crafting a bullet point, then you pop your CV into ChatGPT to check, for example, the whole world can potentially be using your content. So A, it's not protected, and B, it's yours. I wouldn't want to share certainly wouldn't want to share my CV. So I just think I would be really wary of it. It can be good in terms of maybe helping you build out a framework, or let's say you're going for, I don't know, a role as a marketing director or head of finance or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
You might get some say to ChatGPT, what kind of keywords should I use?
Yeah.
But normally it will give you too many, and then you still have to go through it manually. But it can be quite nice to create a bit of a framework based on a job spec. But I would say, don't upload your CV onto it, and just be really wary, because it doesn't sound like a human at all. It really doesn't.
No.
So,
And that's so interesting that they're being rejected for using AI by AI.
Yeah.
I've got this question, and it's actually, once you send off your CV, should you go and contact that same recruiter manager or maybe that head of HR or the person who's looking after that job? Would you advise to then find them on LinkedIn and be like, hey, I applied for the role, really keen, or is that not really appropriate?
The latest figure is that around 85% of jobs come through your network, not through a traditional channel. So by traditional channel, I mean a random application where you don't know anyone at the firm. It doesn't mean you won't get that job, but it's a lot harder to get that job. So what I recommend you do is, if you're applying for a role in an organisation, have a look at who you might know there, or go through LinkedIn under second degree connections, and that will show you who you know that knows someone that works there.
Yeah.
And then I would try and make that connection, or say to whoever your friend might be or that person that you know, can you make that introduction? So try and go through the back door. Definitely connect with recruiters, follow up with recruiters. Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard just to apply for a job and get through. It doesn't mean you won't, but if you can also, I guess, leverage the people that you know, you've got a much better chance.
Yeah, no, I love that. Although I did get a random message today on LinkedIn from someone who I'd never met. And obviously she'd gone through her LinkedIn and been like, oh, hi, I'm moving to this country. Is there anyone you know who can help me out? And I'm like, I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're good. That's my reputation on the line. So that was really interesting as well. I guess make sure you have some kind of relationship with the people that you're reaching out with as well. So in regards to length of CV, because I know sometimes depending on the type of industry or the type of country, is there a standard length that a CV should be?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I know you know this already, Molly, because we've known each other for a while, but I lived in Sydney for 7 years. So I know the Australasian market really, really well. I now live in London, and I've worked across the Middle East and Asia Pac and the US as well. And it is slightly different. For the majority of the world, you are looking at a 2-page CV. Mm-hmm. Australasia seems to be the slightly different, where it can be a bit longer. So regularly across New Zealand, Australia, sometimes a bit of Singapore type of region, you can go longer, maybe 3 or 4 pages. I wouldn't go any longer than that. UK, US, Europe, Middle East, most places in the world. You're very unique in Australia. You'd go for 2 pages. Yeah. I mean, if you've got less than 4 years of experience, you might go for 1. But even if you've got 50 years of experience, you would only go for 2.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. I did not know that. So that is good to know. So we spoke about the ATS, which is that application tracking system. And I remember the first time you told me about this, I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing and that existed. So we've got this application tracking system. So how can we optimize our CVs for that? And I guess maybe we can include keywords. And for people who don't really know what keywords are, could you maybe just go into a little bit of explanation about that?
Sure. So the ATS is the database that every recruitment firm has at every level, by the way, from the most junior to the most senior. And every advert you see online, nearly all of them are built within an ATS. So what happens is, when you apply for a role, depending on the volume of applications that they get, the ATS, the computer might do that initial screen. If you take, one of the big, investment banks or, Mars or a huge company, they have hundreds of thousands of applications a year. You can't expect a human to be trawling through all of these. So the ATS is really useful. For more senior roles or where they've had a smaller number of applicants, a human will screen your CV. So don't panic too much. But keywords are important, because the ATS basically looks at the job spec and looks at your CV, and it will look for a match of keywords within that, or dates and so on. But the other way it's used is that recruiters, when they get a role, will go through their database and they will or they pay to go in the back end of the job boards. They pay a lot of money to go in the back end of LinkedIn, which is the world's largest applicant tracking system. They pay a lot of money to do that, and they will search using keywords on your CV or your LinkedIn profile. So ultimately, if you can't beat the ATS, you're really going to struggle. And I would say it's not the most important thing, Molly, but it's a really important part of your CV, and it underpins it. The most important thing, going back to our very first question, is showing your value and tailoring your CV. But the right keywords will help you get over the line. So let's say that a recruiter is seeking, I keep going to marketing, but we'll go for marketing again, marketing manager or marketing director who's got particular expertise in the pharmaceutical sector, who's maybe got a really deep understanding of social media and has maybe worked across Asia Pacific or across Europe, and maybe has been very involved with acquisitions. So has worked for companies that have been swallowing up other companies and doing a lot of rebrands. If that's what they are looking for, they will have a number of keywords that they will have in the job spec. And if your CV doesn't meet that, they're probably going to pass you by. And that goes back to that whole point about tailoring. Make sure you've got the right keywords. So the keywords might be, digital media marketing manager, head of marketing, marketing director, M&A, branding, rebrands, any number of things. But you just need to make sure that you look at the job specs and do a bit of a cross-reference of getting those keywords in there.
Okay, nice. And just making sure that you don't go to all that effort and put it all on a table anyway. I still can't get over that. So,
Yeah.
I did that. So what advice would you have for people who are transitioning into completely different careers? I know you guys work with people one-on-one to rebuild their CVs, but yeah, I guess where's a good starting point for someone who's like completely changing industries?
So if we're talking specifically about the CV, if you go back to all the things we've already talked about, you've got to prove that you'll be valuable and you've got to have the right keywords. So what you need to do is look at, for all of this, really, you need to be thinking, well, who's my target audience? So what do they need to see in my CV? And then review your former career and think, well, what's transferable? But it's less about, it's about your skills to a certain extent, but it's always about that value. They're paying you money because you're going to deliver results. So how can you show those results? Think about keywords. What keywords can you include to get you over that line? And remember, keywords also are important for the human eye. It's not just for the computer. If you're scanning something, the recruiter will spend about 4 seconds doing a quick scan of your CV, 5 if you're lucky, and they'll think, right, I'm going to read it or I'm going to reject it. If you've got the right keywords on the page, it's almost they're going to leap out of the page to the recruiter. So if you don't think you've got the right keywords, let's go back to the marketing example. I want to move into marketing. What could I be doing in my spare time, maybe, that would give me the keywords? So is there a local community group? Can I do some volunteering? Can I get involved with a friend's startup? What could I be doing on Instagram myself? Can I do some storytelling? To start building those keywords into your CV by doing them in your non-professional life can be a really good way. Is there any extra study you can do? Can you go to any networking events on LinkedIn for free so you can start to build that experience and get it onto your CV to get you over the line?
Awesome. No, I love that. And is there like ideal formula or structure, like bullet point, like these work, like is there like an ideal format or magic formula for a CV?
I can tell you my magic formula. I think, I know that what we do works, is really effective. Our magic formula, as you know now, starts with proving your value, right? That's the number one thing. But I would say at the top of your CV, your name, your contact details, your LinkedIn URL, which should be nice and short. And then beneath that, I would normally have a job title, which is your target job title. And then straight into the profile, exec summary. I've often seen CVs where that's the whole of page 1. I would say keep it really short. No one's going to read a whole page of yawn, really boring profile. They're not interested. So probably 20% of page 1, 25%, and then straight into your experience at that point, focusing on your value. I keep saying it, but that's the most important thing. And then towards the end, you might, if you want to have a key skills section, Molly, you were talking about having a table that you used to have probably at the top. If you want to include key skills, the keywords, I put them at the bottom. I think the reader wants to get straight into your experience quickly. So have that further up on page 1. And then you might want to have towards the bottom, obviously, your education, only anything that's relevant. It doesn't need to take up too much room. Any extracurricular type personal interests that you do that reflect competencies that we know employers are looking for.
Yeah.
For example, you're a triathlete or you like marathon running. If you have that on your CV, anyone reading your CV will go, oh, great. So Molly's clearly really committed, high energy, got a lot of stamina. So by just writing about some of the things you do, it can really show some of the competencies you'll bring to work. So have a think about anything else that you do. And then you also might want to talk about your career break if you've had one. You might want to have a career break section towards the bottom.
I was going to ask about that because obviously we have a lot of women listening. A lot of those women are mothers, have taken time off their career. And that is the question we get asked, like, how do they approach that on a CV?
The way that I would do it is be really honest about it. I think that's the first thing. It's very easy to feel a bit embarrassed or try and hide it. I wouldn't try and hide it at all. So firstly, if you were returning post-career break, I think I'd put a bullet point in my profile at the top following planned career break. You don't need to say maternity or whatever the reason might be. It could be any reason. Just following planned career break, now seeking to transition to blah or return to blah. And then in your professional experience, I would just have on the left planned career, same format as your jobs, planned career break, and the dates on the right. And then don't write anything underneath it, and then continue with your professional experience. Yeah. And then I might have a career break section towards the bottom. And in that I would include, I suppose, if you've done anything that might be really interesting, if what you've been doing is at home looking after the kids or your family member who's ill, that's totally fine, but you probably don't need to go into that. But if you've been helping friends with their startup, or you've done some volunteering, particularly high level volunteering, I would include it. At the end of the day, your CV is a marketing document. You've got to show how good you are. So that's really worth including. If you've been studying, I'd include it. But, I've seen CVs where people say things like chauffeur to busy family of 4, personal chauffeur to busy family of 4, or diary management to 3 busy children and husband. It's just really, and you might think it's funny, but it's not that funny because we've all seen it a million times. So I wouldn't do it. Okay. Keep it really professional. Yeah. You might think it's been quite clever and funny, but it's not.
It's not as rogue I've seen it before. And I love what you said about a CV as a marketing doc, because I think that nails it. Like, we forget that it is literally a piece of marketing and we've got to market ourselves. So we need to dedicate time to this. This isn't something we can just whack together in 5 minutes as well. It needs like good thought and or professionals to do it for you. So I guess that was great because we kind of talked about, taking a professional or like taking planned gaps or a planned break. As far as LinkedIn goes, like, I've seen some really high level like execs and their LinkedIn is shocking. So how important is having your LinkedIn to match your CV? And can we copy and paste our CV onto LinkedIn?
So they are actually quite different. If you think about it, your CV is normally much more formal as a document. LinkedIn and the way that people use LinkedIn is much more informal. So, for example, my profile, by the way, everyone, please connect with me if you're listening to this or watching this. But you'll see how I've written mine. It's very much in the first person. It's quite chatty. It really gets my personality across. Whereas my CV is much more formal. There's no pronouns. There's no sort of my, I, we. It's very much more clear and more formal. So the way we use LinkedIn is very different. So you can't copy and paste the two because they are so different, but they need to complement each other. And basic level job titles and dates, of course, need to match. But more importantly is that they're really telling the same story. And the key problem, and where I think we write a lot of LinkedIn profiles, where it becomes trickier is that you only have one LinkedIn profile, but you have a number of CVs. So we will regularly write a portfolio of CVs for a client. They're slightly different. Yeah. And not massively different. But with your LinkedIn, you've only got one. So it's quite a tricky balance to think, well, who are all my target audiences? Yeah. In my case, I've got 6 different target audiences. Okay. So I'm appealing to individual clients that want to buy CVs on LinkedIn and coaching. I'm an executive coach. I'm writing for organizations that want to engage us to support their people. I'm a keynote speaker. That's 3. I'm a leader within the Hanover business who bought our business a few years ago. So I want to be seen as a good leader. I'm massive on DEI, particularly around gender. So I want to be seen in that gender space. And finally, I'm a non-exec director and I want to further that career. So I've got that piece as well. So I've got 6 different audiences. My CV is much easier, it's just one thing. So it's just thinking, who's reading this? How do I want my colleagues to perceive me? Clients, competitors, recruiters. Think really carefully about your audience.
Yeah.
It's very, very different. Whereas your CV, you can have 20 if you want, it's totally fine.
Love that. And final question. So as you mentioned before, you've looked over 250,000 CVs. So if you were reviewing a CV, what would make you immediately want to interview a candidate?
I think you know what I'm going to say to this. It's about seeing how valuable they will be to the business. It's all about the value. If you think about your cost to a company, yes, you've got your salary, your bonus and the benefits. There's the cost of your desk cost. You cost money every day you go to work in terms of the space and the tech and everything. There's the training they put into you. There's the fact that most people aren't productive for the first 90 days. There's the recruitment cost, the opportunity cost of not hiring Fred or whoever else it might have been. You're much more expensive than just your salary. A lot of people don't realize that. So you've got to show you're valuable. And, I think, and I've talked a lot about value throughout the last half an hour, Molly, but for me, that's the most important thing for sure.
Yeah. Oh, so many amazing takeaways there, so many golden nuggets. So thank you so much, Victoria, for sharing with us on the podcast. And if people want to connect in with your service, can you just give a little bit of an overview of what you do? Because it's so good what you guys offer.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So what we do is we are a writing and a coaching firm. So the full journey really is that individuals engage us to help them figure out what they want to do. I call that their career strategy. What do you love? What do you not love? What are you good at? Where are your skills? And really helping individuals figure out a game plan for their career. So that's part 1. Once you know what you want to do, straight into the writing. By the way, a lot of our clients just come for the writing. The way the writing works is you would have an hour and a half really in-depth consultation on Teams, following which we create all your documents and you have them back within just over a week. So that will be all the content for your LinkedIn, your covering letter, your CVs, your bio, whatever you might need. Then straight back into more coaching if that's what you want. How do I network? If 85% of jobs come through my network, I need to get working on my network. How do I get recruiters on board and on side? So coaching around the job search and finally interview training. So that's the full journey through to offer.
Awesome. And we'll pop all the links where you can connect with Victoria and her services in the show notes. But a big thank you again, Victoria.
Thanks, Molly.